Welcome to the Mindful Millionaire podcast. I'm your host, Leisa Peterson, and today we'll be diving into the framework that I've created to help people change their behaviors and mindset when it comes to money. So you can drop away the lack and scarcity ways of thinking and create greater prosperity for yourself. I'll be introducing you to the framework, how it works with the 7 primary chakras, and then we'll dive into the first of the 7, the root chakra. Before you listen to this episode, you might enjoy taking my Chakras and Money quiz at wealthclinic.com so you can see which chakra is most likely out of balance for you. Before I began integrating the chakras into my money practices and teachings, I had no idea of the powerful benefits that would be gained by myself and my clients who put them to use. Within a few weeks of creating the first of many chakra meditations, my clients began to share the dramatic impact they were having on their financial psyches. Feedback included things like, for the first time ever, I'm no longer worrying incessantly about money. I feel so peaceful. I'm getting more done than I can ever remember. I'm finally feeling called to change my money habits. And the more I heard, the more I knew it was important to continue researching and developing this body of work. By using my chakra meditations on a regular basis, my clients were quite remarkably able to hold the space for their money struggles without falling into fits of blame, shame, judgment, and/or avoidance. This helped them go deeper into healing than ever before without running into obstacles that had prevented their recovery in the past. Through my research and having thousands of people practice the meditations, provide me with feedback, I was able to confirm the ways in which scarcity gets trapped both physically and metaphysically within. One way to explain how this works is to imagine that the chakras are like lenses on glasses that get fogged up as a result of our emotional imbalances and blockages. The fog is a symptom of the unconscious patterns of guilt, fear, shame that we're holding on to as a result of things that happened in the past. This fog prevents us from seeing life as it truly is and creates a distorted reality in which, instead of seeing prosperity and abundance, we see scarcity and lack. This also makes us think we ourselves are a reflection of scarcity, which ends up showing itself in different money patterns according to the energy center that we feel the most stuck and not coincidentally the most lack. The map that the chakras provide is a vertically aligned depiction of the process of your individual maturation through 7 distinct energetic phases, starting at the base of the spine and rising upward to the crown of the skull. This process of spiritual adulting is used to explain the movement of energy that takes place most often by ascending toward the divine as a result of gradually mastering the physical world. At each stage, you gain greater self-understanding and appreciation for your own ability to create physical form and eventually to channel the divine. In addition to helping you understand your own evolution, each of the 7 chakras can help you notice and release the bruises that you've accumulated through your life and beyond. That's because the chakra system helps you engage in energetic self-evaluation by revealing how your thoughts, feelings, memories, and beliefs are stored in one of these 7 major energy centers. The more energetic bruises you've collected, the more likely it is for them to negatively affect you by causing you to engage in fearful and avoidant behaviors. This is why having a map to use in the identification and release of these bruises is such powerful work. Further, I've found that for those of us who have experienced a lot of bruises in the past, we do not always have a strong navigation system for dealing with conditions that trigger fear, which makes it harder to heal ourselves. The chakras, as they are explored in my book, The Mindful Millionaire, help you to not only notice where you're stuck in limiting patterns as a result of scarcity beliefs, but also to how to heal those patterns once and for all. For this reason, even with an elementary understanding of the chakras, combined with daily meditation practices, you can find yourself living with greater harmony and peace in all areas of life. Knowledge of the chakras is most comprehensively found in the science behind the practice of yoga and was first formulated by the physician sage Patanjali. Chakra centers each govern specific aspects of your physical, psychological, and spiritual being, and can only be discovered through personal experience and working with them. A state of balance between them is the key to the health of the various body systems that they govern. In other words, imbalance, damage, or blockages of these centers can lead to problems in the physical, psychological, and spiritual aspect of our being. By learning about them, you're learning how to repair, balance, and clear your own personal energy system. So, to understand how this works, we must dive even deeper into the chakras and the framework I've developed that gives context to how chakras and money go together. The first chakra lens regulates your sense of safety and security. If you're struggling with this chakra, you're afraid of not being able to take care of your most basic needs. This is the root chakra, and your needs are food, shelter, clothing, anything that allows you to feel like you're able to take good care of yourself and stay safe. This chakra is located at the base of the spine in the area of the perineum and is represented by the color red. When you have money, you may feel a sense of temporary relief, but when you don't, all hell can break loose inside and your fears can consume all of your thoughts, which leads to a concept called tunneling, which you can read more about in a book called Scarcity. When you're looking at life through a warped security lens, there's a strong chance that the game you're playing with money is called playing not to lose rather than playing to win. Playing not to lose is about avoiding your fears. If this sounds like you, it doesn't have to be your reality. As the root chakra comes into balance, you feel a sense of grounded strength that translates into your experiences with money. This helps you become more flexible and consistent in money-making activities so that you can take more risk, which helps you to dynamically move through life. As a result, you feel stronger, more capable when it comes to earning money consistently and sufficiently. So your fears about security and safety no longer cause you to avoid situations in which you might lose or fail, thereby shifting into a play to win mentality. A few people who live with a very balanced root chakra include Oprah Winfrey and Warren Buffett, two billionaires, okay? And here's some quotes that they've shared that I want you to just take a moment to feel how different their energy is and how it's most likely affected their ability to build wealth for themselves. Oprah said, "The reason I've been able to be so financially successful is my focus has never, ever for 1 minute been money." Another quote is, "I have always had a great relationship with money, even when I barely had any to relate to. I never fear not having it and never obsess about what I had." Warren Buffett said, "We simply attempt to be fearful when others are greedy and to be greedy only when others are fearful." Now, Warren Buffett, billionaire, interesting that he's sort of realized that a lot of people struggle with root chakra issues and he's made a lot of money as a result of that. The other thing he says is the most important thing to do if you find yourself in a hole is to stop digging. And finally, Robert Kiyosaki, also a strong root chakra guy, says the more a person seeks security, the more that person gives up control over his life. So you can see how the root chakra being out of whack can actually cause a lot of challenges and keep you from building the wealth that you're seeking. You may feel extreme fear no matter how much money you have in the bank, which is something I call bag lady syndrome or bag man syndrome. And the manifestation of this fear shows up in one of two ways, or both ways, actually. You can either have an overactive chakra where you feel like you have to work very, very hard to make money. You might overwork, you may obsess about making money, Or if you have an underactive root chakra, you find yourself avoiding money completely because it's so triggering to you that it feels safer to just ignore it and avoid it. There are many causes for why you likely feel this way. It could have to do with things that occurred growing up or even into adulthood. One So, I want to talk about the power of story before I dive into a specific story of someone I worked with to help them bring their root chakra into balance. As humans, we're wired for story. We seek it out, we respond to what we hear. It touches us deeply. And because storytelling is the language of the brain, we're thinking in story, we probe through them, trying to find the meaning of the things that are happening to us. And story isn't even something that we need to learn how to understand so much as we listen to it from the level of our heart, and it guides us to hearing what we need to hear. I share stories about my clients not to upset you or alarm you, but to have you see the commonalities or the lack of commonalities. Because what you're trying to do is understand which of these chakras are causing me the greatest bit of confusion and frustration and disappointment. And when we see the story playing out for someone else, a lot of times we can see in ourselves the things that are happening, the common ground, if you will, that's happening in our own lives. One story that evidences how someone with an underactive and overactive chakra is with Danielle. Now, Danielle came to me when she was running a hair salon. She'd been in business for a long time. And despite her solid work ethic and upbeat, cheerful personality, her success on the outside was covering up that it was not a good situation inside of her business. She was barely squeaking by. We discussed her finances and other business issues, but the longer we spoke, the more I knew that her story ran deep. And I could tell that she had a lot of fear around not having enough money and not being safe. And so I told her that I thought her mindset was the thing that was getting in the way of her reaching her goals. I could already see that there were bigger issues deep inside that she wasn't very in touch with, and that was causing her to have a lot of confusion, not knowing what the inner challenges are that are causing the outer frustrations. And so what I have found in all of my work is that the way that we can change our external circumstances is by understanding the backstory, knowing what happened in the past and how it transpired to create the situations that we're living with today. And in that experience, we can become more receptive to looking inside of what we're holding on to, what fear, what frustrations, resentments, guilt, shame, um, being resentful of other people and the way that they treated us. I mean, all of those things are affecting how we believe, about what we believe about money, what we believe about ourselves. And so, if we want to change our behavior, we can look inside of these past experiences to unlock the process of healing, ultimately, of dropping away all of these stories, of feeling like we're a victim to life. And that really does play out a lot in the root chakra. So in Danielle's case, she grew up in Chicago. Her earliest memories were of her parents fighting a lot, even to the point where it turned into physical abuse. They drank a lot, and it was a very unstable home to be exposed to. When she was 5 or 6, her mom woke her up in the middle of the night, as well as her sister. And her mom explained that they were moving to her grandmother's house in Oakland, California, far away. And it turned out that would be the last time that Danielle ever saw her father again. Before long, her mother unfortunately found another abusive relationship, and that led to a lot of turmoil in the home. It also was a problem because both of them drank, and they would often find themselves working in low paid jobs and losing those jobs, to the point where there would be times when there wasn't enough money for food or electricity, or their home situation was unstable. And so it was a rough situation that just kept repeating these fears over and over again, that she wasn't safe. When she was 15, her stepfather asked her to pack her bag and come with him, and she knew better than to argue. And what happened was, he took her to San Jose, got to downtown, and asked her to get out of the car and explain that they didn't have the capability of taking care of her anymore, and that she was on her own. In her shock, she tried to get some understanding of what was going on, and he didn't give her much. He threw some money at her. She got out of the car, and even though it was so stressful, and her memories aren't even all that sharp, she knew that she found her way to a church, and the church ended up finding places for her to live for the next couple years while she went to high school. So when she finished high school, she found herself falling in love with a man who had also come from a troubled background. He had been physically abused by his stepfather as he was growing up. He went to military school. He ended up getting into a lot of trouble. And so you have these two people finding each other, in their 18, 19 years old, falling in love and getting married quite quickly. So what ended up happening is, things actually went pretty well at first. They were deeply in love with each other. Danielle found out she was pregnant within weeks of the marriage. Thankfully, her husband's mother helped them financially get set up so that they'd have a home to live in, and were able to care for their baby. Early on, things went really, really well, but Danielle chose to stay home and with the baby. When they found out that she was pregnant again a few years later, the financial pressure started to rise pretty quickly. And the more pressure that was put on her husband to make money and take care of things, the more he fell apart. He would get so distressed that he would end up even losing jobs and not telling her, to the point where bills would go unpaid and the lights would be turned off. In her fits of despair, she would be, yelling at him, saying all the things that she wasn't able to say when she was a kid to her parents, and that would only trigger her husband more. This prompted her to go to beautician school and start working so that she could subsidize the family income. And she did a great job. She had a lot of success early on. She eventually went from working for someone else to working for herself. But all the while, the pattern of this relationship was that they would make enough to barely get by, and then spend all that they made and still end up in debt, to the point that they never had much in the way of savings accounts. They never had retirement accounts. They just didn't have a way of mindfully paying attention to their money. So by the time Danielle came to me, she had already divorced her husband. She was running her own salon, but again, she wasn't making enough to be able to save and to prepare for any kind of retirement. And she was really scared about that. So what happened was, we were able to dive into this backstory around the struggles that Danielle had faced growing up, and these fears of abandonment, these fears of not being safe. All of that were things that she was still holding on to as if they had happened yesterday, but instead it had been many years before. And as a result, what happens when we have a belief system that tells us we're not safe, I've found that, without knowing that this is happening, it's not your fault. I want to be clear about that. But we have a way of um, taking our beliefs and moving into the world, trying to prove that they are true, even though that's the absolute positively worst thing, and we know that we don't want to be living that way. So what has to happen is these beliefs have to be deconstructed so that we have a healthy sense of being able to take care of ourselves, but not so extreme that we're so afraid of dealing with money, which is what happened for Danielle. In her situation, she had, these deep set beliefs that if she wasn't careful, that she might not have enough money to eat or survive, that people couldn't be trusted to not abandon her. So she needed to do whatever she could in her relationships to keep peace, which is why she stayed in her relationship as long as she did. That she was never going to be able to be free of her money struggles. And of the 7 scarcity beliefs, the need for security is one of the most difficult to disrupt and ultimately break free of, because I think it goes all the way back to our ancestors tens of thousands of years ago and their focus on survival at all cost. The shadows that end up appearing, and what shadows are these hidden parts of ourselves that we don't want to look at because they're really scary. We don't want to own them. So these shadow aspects of ourselves need to be brought into the light. And that's exactly what happened for Danielle. By going through the I Prosper process, which is featured in the Mindful Millionaire book, and examining her past, Danielle could feel how she was ready to release many of her lifelong fears, especially this shadow belief that I am not safe. Realizing how many things she had taken personally, and believing that just because her mom couldn't take good care of her, that she wasn't safe, or that because her husband couldn't take care of her, she wasn't safe. And so what had to shift was for Danielle to find peace in this life, was the belief that she was actually safe and that she could take care of herself, and that these old beliefs, these old patterns no longer served her, and in fact caused her to make decisions and hurt herself in the present time and in going into the future if she didn't change them. So working with her inner child and opening her up to the love that she has inside. And from that love lens, she was able to see everything in her life differently, which caused things in her personal life and in her financial life to change quite dramatically in a very fast amount of time. By understanding and accepting her fears surrounding the root chakra and chipping away at the shame she felt inside, she gained more of an ability to stay present in the moment when challenges occurred. And this allowed her to take more time to sort through the best plan of action without reacting with fight, flight, or freeze to painful situations. And this transferred into shifting her habits of avoiding money by allowing her to become friendly to the situation she needed to confront as a business owner. So after our work together, she began to inventory her finances, noticing what was working, what wasn't. She stopped spending money on things she didn't need. She got to work on creating a budget and tracking her spending and her cash flow. She also raised her prices. She found new products to offer in her hair salon. I mean, all of these things that would have been obvious to other people weren't obvious to her because of these shadows. So altogether, these changes allowed her to start making more money, to have a more thriving business, to have a more thriving personal life. And she also engaged in, meditating with a focus on grounding and breath work, because those are really, really good practices for root chakra, bringing us into our bodies, sometimes when we struggle with root chakra, we'll find ourselves sort of escaping mentally from our bodies. We don't want to be in our bodies because there's so much pain here in the human form. So we sort of try to escape. And as we do grounding and breath work practices, we come into our bodies. A few quotes by Susie Orman that really hit the point about the other side of the root chakra include, the only way that you will ever permanently take control of your financial life is to dig deep and fix the root problem. She also says anything that gets people to think harder about their financial security and take some responsibility is a good thing. And then finally, the new American dream is one of responsibility. The other thing that Susie shares is that she's seen that sometimes poverty or financial struggle is the greatest gift you can ever be given. Sometimes it's the loss that's the key to the leads that you ultimately gain. So now I invite you to think more deeply about your own root chakra, what patterns you've been evidencing in your own life, what are you ready to let go of so you can begin anew. Practically speaking, if you're feeling like root chakra is something that you're working through, then I encourage you to, number one, find your richness within. It's here somewhere. And when we are seeking out the richness inside of us, it's a lot easier to make some of these other changes or to look in the places that scare us. So find the richness. When we're sick, we think of a healthy person as being rich, right? When we're poor, we think of a wealthy person as being rich. But what we often don't do is take stock of like where we're at right now and find that richness in whatever areas of your life it exists: relationship, health, finance, whatever. And I want to mention too, with the root chakra, this was one of my central themes in my work and why I began this work, because my mom struggled with her root chakra. She passed it on to me. And what I found is that some of us, right, the underactive is we push it away and we avoid it. The overactive is we're working really hard. It's all about the money. We've got to have more. We've got to save more. So even though Danielle's story is more extreme in the underactive root chakra, I want to remind you that just because you've got money doesn't mean that you don't have these deep-seated fears under the surface. So the other thing, number two, that you can do is it's a great time to take stock of your finances, do a personal net worth statement so you can find out where you're at. Sometimes it's going to show up and it's going to be negative, especially if you have student loans or a lot of, you bought a home recently and you didn't put much money down. And there's a lot of reasons why sometimes we can have a negative net worth. But I want you to see where you're at, to be able to chronicle it, because what I found is when we pay attention to our net worth, we actually start to change things for the better. We start to notice, our spending in a different way. And I'm providing you with a spreadsheet that you can download, an Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet, if you go to the show notes for this podcast. And then three, you can also listen to my root chakra meditation that's provided in the show notes, and take some time to listen to this show again, notice the epiphanies, notice what the meditation helps you become more aware of, and know that this is a journey, not a sprint. Finally, if you haven't yet taken my chakra and money quiz, be sure to go to wealthclinic.com. You'll see the quiz link at the top of the homepage. It will help you see which chakra is likely most out of balance. But keep in mind, for most of us, we all have imbalances in all seven. So it's something that once we tackle the lowest, starting with the root, we work our way up, and it's beautiful and perfect. And I'm sure that you can find benefit in every single one of the chakras. So thank you so much for listening. Namaste.